Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bridge Podcast. I am your host, James Howard, and I am joined by two people this evening. I'm gonna start off with the lovely Ingrid B, and uh, I'm also joined by Philip
You forgot.
Singleton. Say it again.
I said you forgot his name, and
No,
he's
no,
gone.
no. I, Irie's texting me at the same time. There you go.
Gotcha.
Ari is texting me at the same time. And here we go. And joined by my co-host, Chef Irie.
Ooh, it could be.
You
Wagwan
right.
pop time.
Hold on. I need to go someplace where I am a little quiet because I'm a little noisy right now. Hold on. Hey, someone, I gotta step outside. I gotta jump on this Zoom real quick. So,
Okay. Tonight we're doing the episode on Juneteenth. What is it? What is it about? And where do we expect it to go? So I'm gonna start off with soon as Irie sits down. With what is Juneteenth? I'm gonna float around the panel and ask them what Juneteenth means to them. I'm gonna always start with the ladies. A lady go first. So Ingrid, what the huh?
I'm
you gotta
Jack.
go first, girl. You
I'm
gotta go
Jack.
first.
Yeah,
It's
we
it's
always
black
let the
man.
ladies go.
It's
All
Black
right,
Man Month on the east side, so I'm gonna let the brothers go.
okay. So
What?
we gonna let Phil. What does Juneteenth mean to you?
Um, it I don't mean to fumble it, but it means a lot about freedom, but not a lot about I would say the independence of the country. Kind of takes a back burner to the Fourth of July. I think that a lot of people, our culture, Black folks, we celebrate it, but we don't really go as hard as we do for Fourth of July, in some aspects. But to me, it symbolizes freedom, some kind of growth in this country. From one perspective, from slavery being the law of the land, essentially, to freedom. I mean, it shows some kind of growth, but I still think that we kind of go harder for Fourth of July than Juneteenth. Just my perspective.
Okay, Ari, what does it mean to you?
Ah, so for me, that's the newly acquired, term and celebratory sort of vibe, you know, over the last, oh, geez, let's say over the last 10 years. Been here in the country for 36 years. And Juneteenth wasn't something that was even spoken about when I first came here. Um, and I doubt if most people, either knew about Juneteenth or even celebrated anything about Juneteenth. I mean, definitely, not in New York where I first went to, and being in, Jacksonville, they were definitely not celebrating Juneteenth in Jacksonville. So for me as an immigrant, it's coming to understand, that the celebration, um, freedom for slaves who are incarcerated. You know, um, that's what the typical meaning that I gather from it. You know, and I feel that I think more should be done within the time, and I think within the last several years, I think more has started to become doable because people have really reached out to the powers that be to get them aware of what the importance is of said Juneteenth. As an immigrant, for us, coming from a different island, that's something that we never had to celebrate.
Okay. For me, Juneteenth is a day of of remembrance. I would say that how we were set free. And I mean set free-ish because because on that day they said that we was free, there was still plenty people enslaved after that day, and they just changed the form of slavery. So Juneteenth was the first step for us gaining our freedom. That's what it means to me. So I'm gonna pivot to our lovely young lady over there, Ingrid. What does it mean to you?
All right. So Juneteenth to me, number one, is a holiday that should be celebrated. It is a holiday that I'm baffled when African Americans don't really know what it is, and not equally, but also disappointed when those of us who are immigrants, Caribbean people, primarily don't know what it is. We should know what Juneteenth is because, we didn't have Facebook and Twitter and phones and all of that. So even though the slaves were freed, all of the slaves in the country did not realize that they were freed. So the last set got to know that on Juneteenth because word had to travel, and it traveled slowly. So if you live in Texas and other certain areas, then you know what Juneteenth is because you've been celebrating it. It's a thing. I'm actually hosting an event for the city of Miami, and they're like, this is the 20-year anniversary. And I'm like, well, where were the other 19 celebrations? You know what I'm saying? I am going to give all credit for knowing about things like this. First to my boyfriend in my head, Dr. Henry Louis Gates, who has done amazing documentaries on PBS that will really give you the breakdown and the history of African American history and beyond. But if you are an immigrant like myself and you want to learn about African American history, you really could just pull up those PBS specials. But there was a store in Liberty City called Afro Books and Things back in the day. And when I was in school, I lived in Little Haiti, 67th and North Miami Avenue. My father's a priest. That's where the rectory was. So when I was going to look for books, because I was an avid reader, I went to Afro Books and Things and found out a lot of information on the history of African Americans in Miami and African American history in general from being in that store. I am almost 50. And I'm still always baffled when there's certain things that people don't know. You're from Jacksonville, Irie, I didn't even know that. Or you lived in Jacksonville for a time. The Black Negro National Anthem, Jacksonville, by a Haitian. We don't know that. You know what I mean? There's just certain things that I feel as Black people that we should know. And the reason why Juneteenth is so significant is that there's clearly a lot of us that still don't know we free. So it really needs to be celebrated so everybody can get the memo.
Well, what I find funny, Ingrid, because the city says this is you said there's the 20th?
The 20th. So they've been doing it for as long as I've been doing events. This is my 20-year anniversary doing events in South Florida. I have never heard of the city of Miami doing a Juneteenth event. Granted, it might have been done and smaller, but everybody's Black this year. Everybody's. We all power.
Since Black Panther, we've got a lot more Black. Since Black Panther, we've got a lot more Black.
Well, I think that it's since George Floyd, and there's a lot of push towards diversity and inclusion, and they have to make sure that they're doing certain things that are seen by the people that have the dollars in order for them to comply with certain things. So when it's those celebrations that have probably been happening forever, I'm sure that the historic archives, Black archives people, I'm sure that Virginia Key Beach has been doing that, the African American Research Lab, people in Sistra, all of those in Pompano, and all of those areas. Why am I the only one in the camera now?
Okay.
Okay, I'm sure that those. I mean, I was cute, but I got confused. I'm sure that those areas have had more intimate celebrations that possibly could not get the funding that they wanted to before. But in order to make sure that you look like you care in 2021, you better get behind that event and put your stamp on it and show up and kiss the babies. Well, don't kiss the babies because COVID, but you understand my point.
So one of the things that I wanted to say real quick, especially for me, coming here into this country, when you say, Ingrid, learning about. So for me coming here to this country, it definitely was about learning about. Every instance you got, it had to be about learning about. So, you things are happening, you don't know what's going on, so you try, so when the whole aspect of the celebrity aspect of Juneteenth really started to take hold. I'd already been in this country 20 years. I had never heard, had seen a celebration. People were never talking about it. So for me, it was something that I never, I didn't know about. And just like you were saying, most people that were born here weren't celebrating that at all. So as an immigrant, we're basically taking on and adopting customs, that aren't, necessarily familiar to us. I've adopted Thanksgiving. I've adopted, other Jewish things and holidays and stuff like that. So I've adopted Juneteenth, the holiday and the celebration of Juneteenth. But now that's only part of it now, because now I have to go back and you got to start understanding, why Juneteenth, what led up to Juneteenth. No, that means so now I got to learn, a little bit more about, African American history, slave history, and the things that are being whitewashed, erased, taken out of circulation. Those are the things that I have to go back and learn, not just about Juneteenth and other things too, but because we're talking about Juneteenth, I had to go back and and educate myself, and so yeah, I'm also flummoxed when I hear people talk about whether it's Juneteenth or other historical aspects of what happened in this country, especially when it happened to Black people. And you mentioned, here in Miami, most of us that live in South Florida don't know, some of the historical context of Overtown, of Coral Gables, of all these people, places where Black history was very prevalent, and it was a building ground for South Florida,
Right.
and for you to come in, and you're like, wait a minute, how come you do not know this? You were born here.
Well, because the divide and conquer has worked, right? So number one, this information is not given in schools. So has not been given in schools, because I definitely know of some amazing teachers that are making sure that their students in those primarily Black schools are learning about those things. There are teachers that are fighting for African American history in schools. There's social justice program being put in schools. It is our job as parents to because they're required to have the option, but they can put it in, they can slide it in like in a regular class so that it's just across the curriculum. But as parents, if they say, I need my child to have an African American history class, if enough parents say that to the principal, then it happens. You know what I'm saying? So I came here, I moved here right after, I believe, the Duffy riots. And I moved here at a time, when I say here, meaning to Miami, I came here about 86. I lived in New York first, after Barbados. And the Haitian community here was fighting that whole AIDS stigma. You know what I mean? The Haitians, the hemophiliacs, and the homosexual were the cause of AIDS, right? So my father was very involved community-wise in protesting and going to the White House and like, y'all are idiots. You can't say this. Like, this is not how that works. So it was just a lot of things that were happening in South Florida, I guess, at the time that caused me to look a little closer at African-American history and realize this was not 400 years ago. Somebody doesn't lie. Because if I count back, that's only 20 years or that's only 40 years. But as Caribbean people, you know that we are taught that they're just lazy and eat McDonald's all day and stay on welfare. It's their fault. And they really need to get it together because it's been 400 years. But the reality is it's 20 years ago. It's 2 years ago. It's 2 months ago. It's 2 minutes ago. You know what I'm saying? So I think as Caribbean people, we have a responsibility to learn about our existence in this country. As a Barbadian, I know that there are Geechee people in Carolina that are probably from Barbados. Their lineage is probably from Barbados. If you're from Philadelphia, your lineage is probably from Jamaica. If you're in Chicago.
That's not a probability, because if you do the history of rum, and that is a direct entry into South Carolina, the whole aspect of rum. So it's not a probability; it is a fact.
Oh no, it is a fact. There's a Bajan history. There's a whole thing about Barbadians in Jamaica. You know, Chicago was incorporated by a Haitian man. You know what I mean? I think there's just some history that we need to know. Just basic stuff. Have we been to the Zora Neale Festival? Do we know that Zora Neale Hurston was from Florida? Do we know that, help me, Florida, come on, good times. Help me.
Florida.
Estelle. Do we know that
Evans or whatever?
Yeah. Do we know that Estoril is from Pompano? Do we know that there was an effort? There was an effort or is an effort. There's a play being produced about her. Do we go? Do we support it? It's Juneteenth is the fact that we are having these conversations about Juneteenth and there's so many Juneteenth events are a sign that people are maybe finally waking up and realizing that they're free and need to free their minds to some things.
It's a two-prong approach. I think I kind of fumbled on the question. I kind of knew what it was going to be before, but I really didn't hear about Juneteenth until I went to FAM, taking African American studies. And a part of it is kind of like Irie. I grew up in a Caribbean household, just like I guess everybody else on the panel. But it's kind of like that's not something we're taught essentially. But then the other part of it is, in the 1800s, they were riding around on horses. It wasn't like cars and planes. The news wasn't moving as fast as it is today, right? We could something can happen today and it takes over a news cycle for the next week. But the issue ends up being you have different states that celebrate it, because in Florida, they celebrate May Day. May 25th is the day that they had their emancipation, because that's the day that Florida was free. The news got to Florida. Okay, cool. But by the time it got to Texas in June, it's like, okay, where's Alabama and Mississippi and Kentucky and Tennessee? It's like everybody has their different staggered dates. So it's kind of like, yeah, we want to celebrate it, but half the people didn't know about it. It's kind of like the Willie Lynch letter. We all know about the Willie Lynch letter now, but they didn't find it until 1972. So imagine if that was around since the 1800s, a whole early 1900s. It's like, oh yeah, everybody knows about this letter, but Black folks didn't find out about it until 1972. So it's a fact of agreeing with you. We're just really at the start of a cusp of saying, okay, where are we at? Where are we learning about African-American history, Black history in America, Caribbean history in America? The best rapper in hip hop, Notorious B.I.G. is Jamaican. It's one of those things like there's got to be some.
There would be no hip hop if it wasn't for Jamaicans.
Right. Even
we started things.
It wouldn't exist. It is what it is.
Marcus Garvey as well. So it's kind of like the Pan-Africanism, everything else is like the roots don't go straight to Black Americans having it. A lot of it goes to Caribbean Americans. Black Caribbeans who help shape the identity of Black Americans. And I guess Juneteenth should have a stronger narrative. But at the same time, I know the 3 states, I did look it up: North Dakota, South Dakota, and Hawaii.
Yep.
Past Juneteenth, there are enough states to actually do it. The U.S. Senate tonight passed a bill to actually recognize it as a federal holiday. So I think that a part of it is we're finally getting to the point, almost 60 years after the Civil Rights Act, of where all these different things are finally coming to the forefront. And yes, George Floyd plays a role in it. The police shooting, Black Lives Matter, it all plays a role in the diversity and inclusion narrative of eggshells we're walking on now in America. But another part of it is this wasn't taught because we didn't know about it. And now that everybody's kind of going and knowing through social media and like the information age, now we're finding ourselves.
I'm 48. So it's been known about for at least 50 years. That's a long time.
Kind of like I said earlier, are we setting off fireworks for the 4th of July or for Juneteenth?
I don't. So I definitely don't do Cinco de Mayo.
Okay.
Even tequila. But I hate tacos. I don't really like Mexican food about that. I don't really do 4th of July. It's whatever. And I mean, like never. Like it's Miami. I'm sit outside in the hot and look at. I'm good.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with people doing Cinco de Mayo or 4th of July. You just need to acknowledge Juneteenth the way you acknowledge you go buy all the tacos to have Cinco de Mayo celebration. Don't even know if the Mexicans really want you celebrating that shit. I'm sorry. And then nothing for Juneteenth. So it's more of, listen, it's all on purpose. And we know it's on purpose. So act like we know. That's all. Just act like we know. We know it's on purpose. We know it's on purpose.
I have something to say on that because growing up in the state of Florida my whole life, I'm going to piggyback on what Phil said. We celebrated May Day. And I'm saying we grew up not celebrating Juneteenth, but we had days in school for May Day. Growing up, like in Northern Florida, they have celebrations still for May Day. That they celebrate May Day before they was celebrate Juneteenth. And I think that's one of the biggest things because it like different in different states, like you said, Phil, they got the news at different times. So people celebrate at different times. So Juneteenth is a day that I feel like we should all just come together and stamp that as the
but it's already
the day.
That's
it's a difference between our holiday and that. We want it to be like a federal holiday.
Yeah,
day off from work. The issue is because so many states have different dates, and really, it just more in the weeds. You end up having like these historical Black figures who have the archives and the Black archives and things of that nature. Not just in like Orlando and Florida, South Florida, Sistrunk, whatever. It's like throughout the state, they disagree. It's like
they don't want to let go.
Let's celebrate Juneteenth, and everybody from the Civil Rights era who's really pushed the archives and keeping the history of this are like, no, we're doing May Day, and that's kind of been the crux of it, to where it's like, okay, we're not going to do anything until the United States Congress does something, but Congress is not going to really do nothing until all the states get on one accord. So it's kind of like we're fighting amongst each other on what day we want to celebrate Black freedom, but there's nothing that really says, okay, let's all agree on one thing.
So are we supposed to be, we as in Black people, to be the ones who are spearheading the celebrations for, because we can't really wait for proclamations from whatever city, whatever state, whatever, I mean, we shouldn't be waiting for them, I should say. And if we're how do we, what should we be doing as celebration? Because to me, okay, Juneteenth, all right, everybody, doing a dinner this, they were doing it, what is part of the celebrations that unify, us as Black people to know that this is truly as we have, what are, how do how do people structure these events, to say, yeah, this is, we are signifying, the celebrity aspect of Juneteenth, whether it's, redoing, events, as players, as, whatever it is. To me, this seems like the day comes and people are just doing events, and the events aren't per se, structured, around what it truly needs to be. It just seems like now it's going to become like another reason to party, as opposed to, having some real true
A
significance
day,
behind.
a day of remembrance.
Right.
Yeah.
On the B side, we've done
Uh,
poetry and live music. I said on the B side, we've done poetry and live music. And if my event is every Wednesday and it falls on the 19th, then I do a Juneteenth celebration. June is Black Music Month, so we celebrate Black music. June is also Caribbean Heritage Month.
right.
Um,
Soul food
and Black
too.
Man Month on the B side. Only on the B side, it's Black Man Month. August is Black August. I'm doing Black August themes the whole month of August. Every event, somebody is going to be like, what the hell is Black August? You know what I mean? It's very acknowledged in New York, California, of course, because that's where it started. And it has become a thing primarily in regards to the prison system, in the prison industrial complex. But there's just so many different things that have occurred, good and bad, that pertain to Black people in the month of August. So that's where that came from. But sometimes when I say it, people are like, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I just make them go Google. But that's what I do. So the event that I'm hosting on Saturday that City is doing, there is going to be live music. There's going to be poetry. There's going to be art. There's going to be information given on some of the historic things about South Florida. And we are in Overtown, so people can learn some things about Overtown, because for Miami, that is their historic Black district. That was Harlem of the South. So people need to know how amazing Overtown was, and that it's coming back and it can be even more amazing.
Okay, so in other words, we need to come together as a people to solidify what day we want. I mean, to make Juneteenth the official day. Everybody needs to get on one accord on that. Even in the state of Florida, we can still celebrate May Day, but we can make Juneteenth a federal holiday.
I ain't not never heard about celebrating May Day. Juneteenth is the only thing I've never. So we can't each celebrate according to the state. Well, you can do both.
Yes.
Again, you can do all of them. But
All of
Juneteenth is the date, because that is the date when everybody knew. We acknowledge that there's other dates for individual places, but supposedly June 19th is when the entire country realized or were informed that we's free. And we're still waiting for some of us to hear about
it. Indeed, yes, indeed. No, but when it comes to the Caribbean aspect of it, I think in terms of for me as an immigrant, it has always been, the journey has been interesting for me. Knowing what I know, coming from Jamaica and having to learn about this country. Just about, for me now, it's not just about Black history. It's learning about someplace new and learning the everything about most as much as I can about this country, because I have to navigate different races and and the politics of this country and everything. So understanding the sensibilities of the people from my island, as it was related to slavery and when slavery was abolished and the things that we went through, and having to come here and learn about this history and understanding how different it was, from a Caribbean perspective, from the slaves in Jamaica, the treatment was so different, and to come here and, not only to hear that, but to feel the stories, the pain through the stories, to see the pain through visual effects, through movies and stuff like that. Yeah, Roots was, the sort of the gateway for a lot of us, I think across the world when Roots came out, and that the visceral effect of that, was just like mind blowing. Because it's just like, what shit, our slaves didn't go through all of that, but it's like, what? But you understood, that yes, we all came from one place, and our ancestors went through the turmoil and the trauma of slavery on the ship, drop off here, drop off there, and so now that I'm here in this country, you know, just having to understand not just the history but the people. So when you become friends with people, when I become friends with African Americans, born here, you know, it's something that I strive and I stress to my Caribbean people that we cannot be so, like you said, divided that we are separating ourselves, separating our history. Our history can't be, it's not separate. There's a lot of inclusion in our history, and we are one people, so we can't be discriminating against a people that was, especially that were born here. So we are the ones that should be taking a back seat, listening and understanding what goes on. We should be learning, not trying to tell people and trying to one up, people who are born here, you know leave your ignorance, to the side. Learn some things, as my man would say on NCIS. Learn something. Let's go learn something. We should all be going out to learn some things about our African American brothers and sisters. As long as I've been here. So it should not be a choice. It should be something that's mandatory.
I agree with that, Irie. The only issue I have, I was on this app called Clubhouse around the holidays before 2021, and I found out about this group called ADOS, the American Descendants of Slaves. And not to take off the Juneteenth route, but there's a faction of Black folks that feel that if you didn't go through chattel American slavery, that you don't have any take on what it's like to be a Black American. And if your lineage didn't come from American chattel slavery, that you're really discounting. And it goes so far as to say that, and I'm just telling you what I've heard. I don't believe it, right? That Obama and Kamala Harris are basically puppets to Black Americans because they don't have a direct link to American slaves. And it's one of those things that goes to further divide. I mean, we're talking Juneteenth here, but when we really get into the issues that, okay, why can't we find common ground, is because, and it's not every Black American or African American, it's the fact of a faction of people within our own culture and community are like, you know what, everybody else who's Black, but they see, hey, is your grandmama a descendant of a slave? Does she have to sit on the porch or be in the field? And it's like, why does that have to be the deciding factor to it? And I guess the big part is, if we talk about reparations and representation, they're like, well, if you grew up in Jamaica, Barbados, in Africa, Nigeria, wherever, South Africa, wherever it is, you shouldn't really be able to talk, determine, or even benefit from what Black Americans have helped do in building this country. So not every Black American I've met has said that or believes that, but it's a fact of, there's a mindset of, okay, how do we get to a common ground and solution? And sometimes some people don't want a solution. They just want to find a further way to say, you know what, your descendants weren't a part of American chattel slavery. And I'm only saying that because that's what they say. So since your people didn't come from chattel slavery, you have no say on what Black America is. And I think that's another fight where we get. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's specifically for reparations. So I think Fact Checker should get on that. The ADOS, from what I have known and heard, it's in regards to reparations. And I agree. I don't agree with everything that they're talking about, because of course you're gonna have somebody that's way left.
Yeah.
You know, that's just like,
No,
I need you to your medication. But I think that it's in regards to reparations. So I'm from Barbados, right? I was born in Jamaica. My mother is Barbadian. I was raised in Barbados. My father is Haitian. I am a descendant of Haitian people who were enslaved and Barbadian people that were enslaved. Therefore, I'm a descendant of the enslavement from French and British government, right? Countries. I am not enslaved by American or America, right? So America doesn't quote unquote owe me money in reparations. There are reparations movements within the Caribbean trying to get England to pay back some money. There are reparations movements trying to get Haiti to get their money from France. The people in America ain't gonna get no money from England, and they're not gonna get no money from France. I don't know about Louisiana and all that stuff, but why am I getting money? Why, if reparations is a thing, yes, I believe that it should be of African American descent. And yes, you should have to prove all the way back. Like they came off the ship here and landed in Virginia, in Baltimore, in whatever, because there are a lot of us that came here from the West Indies, right? So they might have been working as slaves. So if you were enslaved here or you were dropped off here and you're a descendant of those people, yeah. And if the reparations are happening, you should get a coin.
I agree with that too. I agree with that too.
Yeah, I agree. I know some of the conversations I had, because I'm half my sperm donor side in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, a big slave hub, and then on my mother's side is Jamaica. So it's kind of like I see both sides. But when I have that conversation with those folks, they're like, "Well, maybe Phil, you get half a reparation. I get half." But it's like, it's like, you know, it's still in the bloodline. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, why are we still dividing it? Because there's still no common sense conversation of, okay, what does reparations really look like after Juneteenth? It's freedom, but okay, in 2021, what is reparations? It's not 40 acres and a mule. Is better education, better jobs? Maybe it's another stimulus check. But how does that break down into the whole fact of, you think the U.S. government is going to actually go check where every Black person's lineage is from and have them verify? It's not. It'll be easier to get a PPP loan.
Yeah, I don't. That's their conversation. I'm not. I don't go into the ADOS rooms. I'm on Clubhouse as well. I have fun on Clubhouse.
But I'm going back.
Yeah, sorry, I go to meditation rooms. I host a meditation room in the morning. We have poetry. We might talk about some issues like fathers' rights and stuff. I'm going to be doing that this week. But I don't go into the rooms that aggravate me. And unfortunately, in those political, you know, I'm in the poetry community. So I know that there are those people that, you know, kill the white people, whitey is the devil, all of that stuff. No, there's some good white people. And then there's some that need to go straight to hell. It is what it is. But there are also some good Black people and some Black people that need to go straight to hell.
Go straight to hell.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, we're human, right? At the end of the day. So that is a political thing. I'm not going to get it like the ADOS people say. I'm not getting into that argument. It's
right. I get that.
I'm not looking for reparations from them. What my question from the host who we're not letting talk, James, right?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Howard. Mr. Howard.
I'm here.
You know, you asked me. You said, "Come on, Ingrid." So you already know. I'm gonna come on.
Hey, I'm here to facilitate and switch cameras, but I threw Ingrid off guard when I put her in the.
I was cute, but you know, I'm here with three men. I want to see y'all. You know what I'm saying? This is entertainment for me. Chef Irie, let's say your question was, how do you celebrate Juneteenth, right? And how do you do that in a way that shows our oneness, right? So help me, Phil. Phil was saying, you know, how do we get that divide over? Chef Irie could do an event where he takes 4 main staples of soul food and shows that it's soul food every damn way, everywhere you go. You know what I'm saying? So if he would take a plantain, I don't know, a cassava, help me, Irie. Plantain, cassava.
Cassava, yam, yellow yam,
codfish.
pumpkin, yeah.
Right, some codfish, and then give with those 4 things or those 5 things, all these different ways that we eat it, which are the same damn thing, but we call it something else. One person put milk in the cook up, another person doesn't. One person puts cinnamon, another person, but it's all the same slave food, right? That we ate and perfected, and we're all the same. Go ahead, Phil.
I'll say the only difference is rice and peas and rice are not the same thing.
Listen, I was at a Jamaican restaurant the other day, and I said, let me get the rice and peas. And I did it just to be a jerk because the beans were there. And she's like, well, we call this, and this is this. I said, go to the back and get me the can. And if the can says that those are peas,
they're peas.
Oh, they're not damn peas. It's rice and beans. But we know Jamaicans are special, so real special. That's why we can't hear you.
Irie, we can't hear you. What you just said?
Oh, y'all talking about me? No, I muted myself because I know I was talking to somebody.
Okay.
You want to take it off?
I don't want more. Just some of it.
So Jamaicans are special, but that would be as a chef.
So I get what you're saying, and so it definitely opens the thought process, to future endeavors, to be, and I think the whole thing is about kudos. Yeah, give Ingrid the props for those ideas. But
no, I'm like, that's what that was. We could do it. Let's do it.
I had to be. I was going to call you about something else, right? Okay, but
let's go. Let's go.
So to be intentional, that means that we're being intentional about how we celebrate, and I think that's what when we have these occurrences for events, we have to be intentional about how we celebrate. And the partying aspect is fine, and how we promote, how we facilitate, how we teach, because the event has also to be there has to be a teaching component, where people are learning. You come out and you learn more than before you paid your ticket or whatever it is to come, whether it's a free event or not.
That's all year. That's all year, right? I'm a Black woman. I do live music and poetry events in 3 Black-owned venues, right? I have vendors at those venues. They're usually Black. You know what I mean? So those dollars are being recycled. I think about, as far as being intentional about Juneteenth, is to make it a culmination of what you're doing all year, right? So all year you're intentional about spending your money with each other. You're going to go to Publix and get our, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to avoid spending money with white people. That's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that our dollars are being recycled within our community as well, the same way the Jewish dollar is recycled and the Asian dollar is recycled and the Latin dollar is recycled. And if we can do that and just feel like that's how we should move, period. Ingrid, sir, he has a thing. He hit me up like, do you know somebody that could speak for Juneteenth? I had a lot going on. I forgot. I'm gonna do it. I didn't know that he came to my event. Some person from You're Plugged In on Instagram. So let's go. He's making he has the intention to talk about something that needs to be talked about and promoted. So we here. And then I find out you're here. So it's family.
I'm here every Tuesday.
And now I know Phil. And and Mrs. Howard likes to wear clear outfits.
Oh man,
private joke, So
But I
You
like
can't say that
I
because
I
for
like the
us,
idea of how we're going to celebrate because and you know what? Why we have to wait till next year for another Juneteenth? You know,
it's Juneteenth every day on the B side.
I might as well.
I'm black all day. You see,
yeah. I made a comment recently. I was on LinkedIn, and people were there's a young lady that posts on LinkedIn, and she posts different aspects of Black excellence, mostly about Black women, if I'm not mistaken. And she did one about Simone Biles. And you have these assholes that come on, well, why do we have to see color? Why do we have to recognize that it's a Black woman? And these idiots that these far-reaching comments. So my response to that was, I'm paraphrasing what I wrote, but that we should be out there doing cartwheels, that we can celebrate Black excellence, celebrate, a woman that is a 7-time national champion, and no, we should not be talking about being colorblind and you don't see color. Bullshit. We are made in all hues and all color shades, beautiful and all around. So the only reason that you should not be talking about it is you just can't see, maybe because you're blind, like you're actually blind, right? So we
and
should
they
be
say
celebrating
why?
our accomplishments and not just talking about it, but we should be, from the mountaintop all the time, because the moment you stop speaking about our accomplishments, the activities, the dates, the historical aspects, they become lost. And if we're not the ones pushing, who else is going to do it for us? They don't want to talk about it. So we have to constantly, persist, bring it up, expand on, on the whole idea of what Black excellence is, Black history is, Black knowledge, Black everything.
When
Talk
somebody
about it so
asks,
much that they're nauseated.
go ahead, Ingrid.
when the blondes ask, "Oh my God, why?" And I'm assuming it was a blonde. Ask, "Oh my God, why does it have to be about color?" You should say, "Oh my God, that's a really good question.
Next time.
Why
Yes,
does it have to be?" And let them go figure that out. I'm not going to give you the answer.
exactly.
You go figure out why it has to be. That's because it is really a really good question. I shouldn't have to quote unquote see color. I should
Right.
see that she's an amazing gymnast.
Yes.
Period. Just
Mhm.
like the 7 of the Black women that are going to the Olympics. All
Right.
7 of them, or 5 of them. Fact checker, 5 of them, 7 of them, but they all Black. That's what I know, right? And that's the story, because it's an accomplishment for us
Right.
to be able to do that. Why is that? Why is this such a big deal? Because no matter what you do, and no matter how hard you try, we are going to excel anyway. We're going to be excellent anyway. And you have tried so many things.
Exactly.
So many things. Like,
Yeah.
if we all just lay down, we're like, you know what, we give up. It would be like, well, child, you tried. Because gosh darn it, they have done the most to make sure that we didn't excel. And every time, everything they throw at us, we turn around and turn it into a javelin and make it a sport, make it a genre of music, make it a fashion statement, make it something. And here we are.
Yeah,
it's 5 gymnasts. Okay, yes. 5 Black gymnasts. Period.
That's awesome.
God bless it. I'm sure some of them were adopted or raised by white people who had the money to send
them.
We really going there tonight? My God. See, that is a critical race theory right there. They talking about critical race theory over Juneteenth. that's one of those things, because I actually had an interview earlier talking about, asking why we see color, why we see race. And during the interview, I told the lady, I'm like, y'all forget that for a time, it wasn't even about that. Y'all were just white people, America, however you want to put it, right? Y'all were labeling people based on religion and where they were from. Like Irish, Asians, and Jews were just as low as blacks at one point in time in this country. So
the Irish are the N-words of the white people.
Exactly. So it wasn't until 50s, 70s, maybe 70s, 80s, where it's like, you know what? Your skin complexion works with us. We're going to accept it. And a lot of things end up happening. So we are going to continue to see the next decade or so, the first black the first black neurosurgeon to graduate from Harvard, or the first black valedictorian from Yale, or first black, second black law review student at Harvard. All these different things we're going to continue to see and get accomplishments. A gymnast as well. It's six with Simone Biles. I think the fact check. But even those 6 ladies, let's say they sweep the medals. It could be all black. First time all black gymnasts get gold, silver, and bronze at the Olympics, right? That could happen, but it's like, just like, and not to compare us to Irish, Jewish, or Asian Americans, but they were limited too. I even told people earlier, it's like we're trying to, for some reason, we're trying to eliminate history to create new history. It's like you can't get to a point of talking about Asian entrenchment camps and not talk about, okay, the Korean War and why Asians were treated that way, or why blacks were treated that way, or why Indians were really pushed off the reservation, or even having a deeper conversation to say Lincoln just didn't want to free the slaves for Juneteenth. He wanted to basically say, hey, let's pack some of y'all up and go back to Africa. Mm-hmm. So if we really want to have that conversation, it's like Juneteenth could be celebrated as, hey, the day we got freedom, or the day that Lincoln wanted our ass back in Africa. Mm-hmm. How do we really want to celebrate it? But to a point of it, yeah, we're still here because we love the country. We fought and died for this country. So a part of it is that, why is it about race? Is this country was built on race. The first 12 of the first 15 presidents were slave owners. It was built on the concept of there's a dominant race, there's an indominant race, or a lower race. So a part of it is always about race, but at the same time, we need to get to a point of getting past that question and being like, okay, let's really talk about the history of why we're here. Because that's the reason we keep breaking these barriers, because there's a history of somebody on top of us stopping us from being the best of who we are. Like Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, these are the first for a reason. It's like they weren't allowed to play.
Mm-hmm. Do y'all talk to your people? Detron, Blackula, thank you. Hey, what's up? My father had a poster on his wall when I was a child that became one of my favorite quotes. I feel like I'm going to mess it up, and I'm trying really hard to remember the person that said it, but it was, I sit on a man's back, choking him and making him carry me, all the while convincing myself and others that I'm sorry for him, and I wish to ease his lot by any means necessary, except getting off his back.
Sounds like white America to me.
And what it wasn't in the photo, it was the picture of a white man on a black man's back. There was a picture of a man on a woman's back. And I feel like they were like, I was a child. This was I left Barbados when I was 10. So I had to be like 6 looking at this poster, and I haven't seen it since. There was another image. I feel it like it was religion. And this is, my father's a priest, but he's a Haitian man first. And I believe it was like a priest, because the shroud of religion is held over us sometimes as well, or a lot of the times as well. Religion is what was used to enslave us. You know what I'm saying? So, the conversation, I think, and a lot of people have said this, is I'm not explaining it to you. Go figure it out. Go figure out why we have to look at race.
As well as we should. We should not be, especially now at this stage, be in the business of not explaining who we are, or explaining our culture, history to people who don't, especially to people who don't look like us, just like everybody else. you have a choice. You can, everything is accessible. We talk a lot on this show about access to information, whether it's financial information, whatever it is. Information is all over the place. So just like how we can go and go find it, y'all can go and find it too.
Kendra said the problem is they will not go and look.
Have them little discussions among yourself, and then when you come on back to us, engage us in that conversation. Engage us in the conversation, the knowledgeable conversation. Leave the ignorance aside. We want that knowledge. So yeah, everybody has a choice. Whether and not just white people, what have you, but we ourselves, among ourselves,
yes.
we have a choice among ourselves as well. We need to be that much more educated about a lot of stuff. So even if we know a lot about, what is it, a little about a lot, or a lot about a little, whatever, however that's it. We still need to learn, keep informing ourselves, about what's going on, around us.
You should definitely watch Many Rivers to Cross. It's a PS series that my boyfriend has. I love him. I'm sorry. Henry Louis Gates. Many Rivers to Cross. He's got others where he goes to Africa to the point of no return and shows you where they got on the slave ships and all of that. But the Many Rivers to Cross series is pretty good on explaining the history of America, the actual history of America, but then how, adding in the Black parts that were not there. So during Reconstruction and all of those things. So yeah. Kendra said, our clear counterparts don't want to admit to the ugly parts of history in this country. A lot of them don't. Yeah. Some of our clear counterparts aren't from this country, they're here to get money just like we are, just like the other immigrants. They came here to get their money. And if they don't have to interact with us, then they don't, they just don't know. What is the ultimate goal of sharing this history with who, Detron?
I think it's to educate people. I was watching an interview on YouTube a few weeks ago. It was really a speech in the Q&A process, and a lady asked, about critical race theory. I'm not going to go back down there, but she talked about how for Thanksgiving she dressed up as pilgrims. She had an 8 and 9-year-old or 8 and 10-year-old at the house, and basically she was like, what? The kids said, "Why y'all dressed up? Didn't they kill the indigenous people?" And then she ended up getting mad because she found out the kids weren't learning about the Mayflower, the Nina Pinta Santa Maria, how Thanksgiving was the holiday that really brought, the discoverers and the Indians together to, help create and build a bond with America. And you have to sit there like, you really believe this fake shit. Like Pocahontas and John Smith ain't happened. Like, it's a Disney movie that people believe, but then when you read the real story, it's like he gave them syphilis and smallpox. Like, there has to be a part of history that we have to tell the reality, but some people in their mind, because they grew up on that. And I learned the same thing in school, but it's a fact of, and I'll sidebar, I went to a Black Christian school. I did not learn about Juneteenth. I learned the Christian national anthem or the Black national anthem, but I didn't learn about Juneteenth, right? But sidebar, or back to it, it's like people have a construct of what they've already learned historically. Even if you go back and watch the Jeremy Lin interview on Up in Smoke with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, he talked about how all he knew about Blacks was what he saw in movies. So he had prejudice and stereotypes in his mind on what it is, but by the time he came here and got to know Black people and played basketball with Black folks, got in the NBA, even though they were saying like racist things to him, especially around the coronavirus, it's the fact of, okay, there's a part of history that you get from TV, from media, but there's a part of history that's not real. Even in the interview I said earlier, the interviewer asked, well, she told me the first time she really learned about slavery was watching Roots. And I was like, I get that. You see 12 Years a Slave, you see all these other movies or TV shows, but why does everything about Black history have to relate around slavery? Like, what about Reconstruction? What about the black leaders that were elected after slavery during Reconstruction that actually implemented and created public schools? Because public schools were only for rich white folks. Black electeds, Black Republicans actually helped create a public school system so everybody could get educated and the government would pay for it. But unless we know our history and we teach people what the reality is, they're going to continue to believe the bullshit. Because even if you read, 1619 Project, and Trump made them make the 1776 Project, if you look at the first 2 pages, it goes from George Washington crossing the Potomac River to Martin Luther King standing up in front of the I Have a Dream speech. That's a big fucking gap between 1776 and 1865. So when you think about it, it's hard for cussing, but it's like, if you don't fill in the gaps of that history, people are going to believe that, damn, George Washington really did that and Martin Luther King got a statue down the street. That's what's up. That's not reality. It didn't happen that way.
We cuss on this show sometimes.
All right. It's for the audience, just in case the kids back there.
You see that?
But so there's a lot.
Yeah.
You can't see it?
Yeah, America's history of racial injustice.
This is a calendar that my friend, Jamaican teacher at a Black high school here in Florida, every day on there has a fact about Black history. And all of her students got this. Why? Because she went to a conference and they had some of these and she requested them. And they mailed right before COVID. So, a lot of that stuff was just sitting in her classroom, but it's not difficult. We just have to do the work. Every date has a historical fact as it pertains to Black America, right? So it's after a certain age.
That calendar.
Huh? Say it again.
Where can we get that calendar? Where can we get that calendar?
I don't know, man. I will send you. It is from Equal Justice Initiative. They're based in Alabama. I'll send you guys the information. I guess they would hopefully have a 2022 calendar, but I got a copy for myself and my dad. If I stole an extra one, I got you, Irie. But Renee, Renee, so it's about supporting. It's about supporting the teachers and the school system and those schools that are doing the work. You know what I'm saying? It's understanding when we get to a certain age, because we have sense, right? We're not slow. We know that the media purposely is giving us this information. Those somebody said it's on there for $3. You can go buy it. Period.
shop.eji.org.
Yeah. So you guys can share that on your page on Facebook. Once we reach a certain age and just open our eyes and see certain things, especially for us from the Caribbean, we remember what we watched on TV. They did a very good job of making things look a certain way. They did an amazing job. And this is the information that's sent across the world. So now we're in a space where it's not just the media is not controlled by the government and by the higher ups and the powers that be, because Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we are the media, right? We're having the conversations. So I think that the answers are what Irie said earlier. We have to be intentional about how we move, how we raise our children. Your job is to make sure that your children know, that your nieces and nephews know in your house. Because once they have that knowledge, and it's not like, oh my God, you need to know this knowledge. It's just, I came up in the house where that's what we were talking about. Then they're going to talk about it to their friends. And if you have siblings, your siblings are going to be talking about it. And when you say, I'm getting you a calendar this year, you're going to go order 20 calendars for 2022 to make sure that your people have it. If you run an office, it's just up in your office space. It's your personal cubicle or your personal office. Everybody that comes in that office is going to be like, the image, because the pictures are good. The image is going to catch you, and then they're going to, oh, you know what I'm saying? How we move, how we dress, what we talk about, all of that is how we teach history, because we are the history now. There are going to be people talking about you, Phil, in 20 years and whatever it is that you decided to do politically. right? They'll be talking about Mr. Howard and the Howards and how this is now a whole ass TV show, and we remember when it was on YouTube.
And we're gonna have to beg to get back on the show because we're gonna have to put it in the queue because all the celebrities gonna be on. It's gonna happen.
Well, by then, Irene and I will be the celebrities, so we will get our invites, and we'll remember you, Phil.
Hey, tag me along. I'm good.
We got you. We got you.
Hey, that'll be the blessing. That'll be the blessing for everybody.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
That's what we need. A show that really pushes the culture.
Listen, we are only as big as we make each other. So if you feel that that's what we need, then that's what you're doing. So keep doing it. My goal for me is pushing the arts. So that's my part of the culture. Yours might be the information. I'm a goodie mob it. I'm a lie to you, make it sound fly to you, tell you to come for sex night, and then I'm gonna slip some other shit in. You know what I'm saying? We gonna let the band play, and then I'm gonna remind you very nicely that it's Black Music Month. And did you know that you understand what I'm saying? Everybody has their way. Everybody is hook us up, take one cassava, make 10 meals out of it. He's gonna invite his Latin chef, and he's gonna invite somebody from the French Caribbean and this Haitian chef, and they're all gonna make this different meals out of these same five things. And it's gonna be a conversation about our shared experiences, our differences make it fabulous.
All right, let's make it happen.
I'm gonna go back.
We making it happen.
I'm gonna go back really quick and just give a basic flat answer that Deetron asked. What is the ultimate goal of sharing this history? And simple as it is, so it's not lost. So it's not lost. Back into when I look at the history, culturally from Jamaica, most of what is the foundation for many of us goes all the way back till some of the things that happened during slavery, right after slavery was abolished, and leading because we were allowed to embrace a lot of our heritage, right?
Who?
Even with
Who?
Who
was allowed
in Jamaica?
No.
Okay, maybe allowed is not the right word. Okay,
so
maybe allowed is not the right word. But there are a lot of things that are still in place that were from the African culture. In Jamaica, there are still places in Jamaica that still speak the African language. I'm just hitting it from a place where we have not lost some of the cultural aspects of our heritage. Not necessarily what came from slavery. And so I'm just saying what we have managed to hold on in terms of how stories are told, in terms of how things move from one generation to next, and have not been lost. So when in terms of languages and stuff, the African language in certain parts of Jamaica is still spoken. The Maroons, the tribal aspect, the Maroons are still prevalent in Jamaica. They still run the towns like they did when it was in Africa. I'm just saying, we tell the stories about history and culture. It is not lost because right now I can see there are people that want to whitewash our stories. They want to erase stories. They want to rewrite. They just want to get that any of this stuff existed.
Irie.
Oh yeah.
The Jamaicans were not allowed to do anything. The Jamaicans have hills.
I corrected myself.
Hold on. No. Hold on. Because you specifically just said that we don't want to lose the history or have it whitewashed. So I want to make sure that I say to you out loud how to say it next time. In Jamaica, y'all are a mountainous island. Every island slave story is different. Every single one of us have a different slave story, okay? In Jamaica specifically, the men, some women too, but the men would go up the mountain. You can't fight people when they're up the mountain. So you just do what? You bring more slaves in, and they stay up in the mountain and just live up in the mountain. That's where you get your maroons from. In Barbados, if you had some babies and they didn't have to bring any more people in because you're reproducing, then you got your little plot and your little chattel house or whatever, and that was our relationship. We're not mountainous. There's, it's different kinds of farming that we're doing. So the Jamaicans, the Haitians, the kids were able to keep their shit because they were warrior people. They were beasts about it. They're like, oh, we going up the mountain, and I dare you to come after me. And that is how they were able to keep their culture. And before you started talking, I was pulling this out for you because you should definitely, it is good, because I didn't know this stuff either until I went to school and took the classes. So this is called From Columbus to Castro, the History of the Caribbean.
Does it talk about how Columbus went and actually ended up learning to sail to the Caribbean from Africa, and how the Africans actually taught him?
I graduated from college in 2001. So don't get me quoting nothing that's specifically in the book. Right. There's certain things that stuck with me, but it's just a good resource. Like, I kept it, even though it was a textbook, I kept it because it's something that you could definitely go back to. You know what I'm saying?
I like that.
So yeah, right there by Eric Williams.
Yeah, it was something I saw a few years ago that really opened my eyes to Columbus more, because they say Columbus founded America. That's what we were taught, but then there were Africans that were coming to the Caribbean islands before Columbus was sailing. So even for a fact of them coming to put slavery here, it's like blacks in Africa knew the wave patterns and were getting to the Caribbean, and Columbus actually found the Caribbean and thought it was America. So even for a fact of all that put together, it's like, I do want to read that book, and thank God it's in the chat so I can at least look it up and go buy it. But like some of those information, like the different books, when you end up really learning, and it's funny because blacks in America, it was illegal to read. Yeah, we weren't allowed to read. And it's like when you end up getting the indoctrined stuff from people who actually kept records and the facts from that time frame, and you sit back and listen, like, damn, like it was really like that. It's worse than the Hollywood movies. If you even go read a slave narrative and you read how hard, like 12 Years a Slave, read Solomon Northup's narrative, and you see how gruesome it really is. And as a part of it, like without that history, we never know. Say it again.
You said the Solomon what?
Yeah, Solomon Northup, 12 Years a Slave. The book the movie's based off.
Okay.
It's so graphic. Even him telling the story of a mother losing her kids and the depression she went through, everything there, you end up sitting back like, this is really how it was. And if you don't get that story, that narrative, how do you know? Of course, Hollywood's going to paint the picture, but it's deeper than a 2-hour movie, because it was really 12 years that the man was enslaved or captured. A free man captured and became a slave.
Gotcha.
Then I have another question. I'm all for history being corrected, but I worry about the delivery from certain groups. There's an undertone that instills a victim mentality. That's why I asked about. I agree with that. I mean, I do think that I guess they try to victimize us with the narrative, but I don't think we're actually asking to be victims. We're just telling the truth. But I do feel that when we get into the reparations conversation, it's kind of like, oh, it's a victim mentality. They're still on slavery. And it kind of gives them their out of their op. But it's kind of like at the same time, if we don't address the trauma, how do you expect it? Because I think that the biggest difference, and we didn't talk about it too much, is even though the Caribbean slavery happened, it wasn't as gruesome as American slavery, because American slavery changed generations and how people thought. And I'm quite sure in our own households, we were taught that, Black Americans think different from Caribbean Americans. And a part of it is maybe it's the fact that we don't feel that there's a auspice over us to say, you got to be scared of the white man. You got to be scared of the law enforcement. You got to be scared of the system, while we just come in and be ourselves. While if you're ingrained and you're indoctrinated from your grandmama, your grandmama's grandmama, your granddaddy, everybody telling you, like, you can't walk on that sidewalk, boy. You can't do that. You better put your head down when you're looking at white folks, man. That wasn't us. So essentially, and we weren't any of us literally slaves, but our heritage lineage. But there's a part of how traumatic the American slavery system was that's different from others. And it's kind of like the trauma from that still hasn't been healed, especially when it's like, that the government controlled us and we didn't have a means of actually doing anything until we ran off the plantation.
We all have remnants of it. There's definitely, there's remnants of things that you're like, oh, we know where that came from, but you're absolutely right. The experience of growing up on an island where I had maybe 2-3 classmates, and I mean in the whole school, that were white, and the nuns were white. So white people were not, it was like, whatever, everybody was Black. The doctor was Black. The police officer was Black. Everybody was Black. So to move somewhere and there are all these different races, it was like, okay, what is this? You know what I mean? My first experience with racism was in New York, an Italian old woman. And my attitude was like, oh, she gonna die soon anyway. I don't really care. Because we stush like that. Somebody else would take it more personal because that has been their experience through life. Me, I'm like, I'm on my, how dare you deny yourself the pleasure of my company? Like, that's just, I don't want to go to your house anyway. Kind of. So yeah, it's definitely different. But we are not victims. We're definitely survivors, but you're going to run me my victim money. So if that's what you want to call it, as long as there's money involved, run me my money. And this is for the Barbados people, not for us. England has to be our money, Irie. In fact, I would get from Haiti, from France and England, right? They need to run me my money. There's a professor that is actually pushing the reparations movement for the UK. Last name, I believe, is Beckles. I want to say first name Hillary, but I'm not sure. But I know that y'all are trying to rap, and I'm still talking. So I'm going to be quiet now. Okay.
Okay. Well, I would like for everybody to give their last thoughts on Juneteenth within 30 seconds. I know that's going to be hard. but we're going to I'll go first with my summation. Juneteenth is a day of, like I said at the beginning, of remembrance, and we should do our best to remember how far we have come and how much farther we have to go. That's all I have to say. All right, Irie, I'll let you go next. Irie, you still there? Or you froze? I think Irie camera is froze. So Phil, if you could go next.
I got you. 30 seconds. I'm looking at the clock. So Juneteenth.
You froze.
Yeah. Juneteenth. I think it's a holiday we really need to celebrate more. Just come to a straight day, whether it's May Day, June 19th, or Juneteenth in general. But I do think there needs to be some greater unity around our culture and people on that date, because I would want to say by the time Black Americans were free, every Black in America in the world was free, in some aspect, because everybody was watching America and seeing what was happening here. So I think it's a forum for us all to come together and see how we could do better.
All right, Irie.
So Juneteenth, the day that the slaves in America found out that they were all the slaves were free, right? So as Americans, I feel it is our duty to us to know that and to continue learning more about this country that we continue to call home. That's it.
All right. And last but not least, the lady of the evening, Miss Ingrid B.
I'm going to say what you said, a day of remembrance, and for people to know where we've been so we can know how far we've come, and not just for us to know, but for collectively, for the country, for the world to understand that freedom for everyone is important. But for the African Americans, this is the story of our freedom in this particular country. My name is Ingrid B. You have been on the B-side. Check me out on thebside.com. Yeah, South Florida, live music and poetry events. And I am done speaking. That was a club note for Phil.
I'm giving you a call tomorrow. Yes, I can do that. I get
Okay.
tomorrow. Yeah.
You know, I have an event tomorrow night. My Juneteenth event is tomorrow night. Wednesday night.
I can
at the
tomorrow evening, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
You'll think about it.
Yes. I should do that.
Yeah.
All right. This has been another episode of The Bridge. We'll see you next week.